Yeah, if you go to devdocs.io. No. Devdocs, DEV, developer documentation. Docs.io, yes. And if you can search for Python, and could you enable Python 3.8? So to enable is that little link on the right. Okay, great. Now we can search across Python documentation. Could you search for unit test? Yeah, and we could just start reading this. So, let's see. Unit test framework, JUnit. Could you scroll down a little? We're just gonna skim this until we find an example of kind of how to write the test suite. So here's an example of how to write. Could you up? Or this basic example it says here. Could you scroll down? I just want to see the more of it. Yeah, you're supposed to use the scroll bar, or the space bar. Okay, so this kind of looks like what could be like a test suite if your test suite was a class, and all of your tests were functions on that class. And so you would import unit test, define the class, and then you would do if name main unit test dot main. And I think that would, if you were to copy and paste this into a file and just run it, I think it would be like running a test suite. So we could try that. So could you copy this entire thing and put it in a file? You could, yeah. That's kind of weird that it doesn't let you, but I don't know why usually I can just copy things out. Right, so if you were to save this and execute it, so if you save this as like unittest.example.py. You can just click hide on that. You can just click hide on that. So, right, if we could just do Python 3 and then the name of the file. You went up a directory? I don't think you wanted to do that. All right, so that would be like if your test suite was this .py file, this is how you would run the test suite, and that ran 3 tests inside. You see, so that could be how we're supposed to structure our our suite, right? So could we look at kind of what tests you have and how we can kind of make it work more like this? So I think you have that test modular rewrite below. So you have this class test modular rewrite. Do you have any other classes in this file? No. So it looks like all you have to do to run your test suite is to run, Python 3.8 and then the name of this file, and then that's running your test suite. Where your test suite is this file. I didn't understand what you said. Yep. I mean, it seems like you know what to do.
Okay. Yeah, before my rubber duck moment, I got stuck with the um, you know with an output testing that involves a slightly more complex data structure, particular the list of dictionaries. So I was yeah, I got stuck there. So okay, yeah, it's so you're yeah, so you're doing some
Do you? Is there a reason you're using Sublime and not VS Code?
um I may have showed you the difficulty I run into when I was dabbling into VS Code last weekend. And I learned, I hope I'm wrong, and I learned that um, at least in my case, the VS Code on Windows of all places does not work very well with Jupyter notebooks. In other words, it doesn't give me the same user experience as I feel
You're not supposed to use a Jupyter notebook inside of VS Code.
oh no? Oh, I see. Because I started learning Python with Jupyter Notebook, and I'm kind of spoiled with the ability to read documentation on a function like
No, IPython notebooks are typically run from the terminal. They usually start the notebook server from the terminal, and then the notebooks are in the browser. You would open up a Chrome tab or something, and then edit your IPython notebook in there. So that has nothing to do with your editor. Your editor is VS Code or Sublime. That has nothing to do with IPython notebooks.
I see. Yeah, because I've been watching a few online classes offered by Microsoft, including one on Django. They were quoting, how easy it is to use the VS Code now. They are actually running a few live coding sessions with the Jupyter Notebook inside VS Code. Pretty cool. Yeah, but again, at the end of the day, you're gonna find the same Jupyter Notebook user experience. With that, I'm not advanced enough Python coder to write this Python script in a notebook in a Word editor.
You should do that. That's how you're
Right,
gonna get better.
right. Thank you. Yeah, that's actually so that's my
You
long-winded
have you should struggle. You should you should struggle with not having autocomplete.
right.
Yeah, that's just gonna make you a better developer. Again, it goes back to what your goals are. And if you want to be a data engineer, this is what you signed up for. You're signing up for you have to learn Linux, and you're gonna have to learn a significant amount of Python, and a significant amount of SQL as well.
Right. Yes.
If that's not your goal, then we should be focusing on other stuff, and I can probably recommend alternatives. But if your goal is to be a data engineer, this is what data engineering entails.
Yes. Very much so. Yeah. That was kind of my long-winded answer to your question as to why I'm using Sublime.
Wait, I don't see how that answers my question about Sublime. I recommend you use VS Code. I don't understand. Sublime is pretty dated. It was pretty popular a couple years ago, but not so much anymore.
Yeah. So VS Code.
So VS Code has issues with the terminal, but that doesn't mean that you should not use VS Code. That means that you should not use the terminal inside of the VS Code, and you should be using a separate terminal, the normal terminal, in conjunction with VS Code. So you would use VS Code for your code editing, and then you would use your terminal for all your terminal things. And then someday in the future, if you care, if you have enough time, maybe you can fix the integrated terminal in VS Code. But
Yeah. Bring up my VS Code. I did. I was going to get to that because again in the
That doesn't mean that VS Code is broken per se. Like you can, it depends on what you mean by broken. The terminal in VS Code may be broken. That's fine, but VS Code overall is a more powerful editor, is a more popular editor moving forward than Sublime.
Right. But the function and all the other fancy stuff, will make me a better code writer and developer, or am I
I don't think it will. I think it's probably a crutch.
right?
The code completion stuff is really good if you're debugging something. So I personally use that when I have a shell. When I have a shell, that shell will be using IPython. And if I'm like really struggling to figure out kind of what can I do to fix a bug, or if I'm struggling with some unfamiliar code, some code that does not belong to me, I might use the autocomplete to try to figure out what can I do in this situation.
Right. Yeah, I see.
But you also need to start becoming very comfortable. Like again, what did you sign up for? You also signed up for typing a lot. So if your motivation is to save yourself from typing, that is probably going to hurt you in the long run. You need to become very comfortable typing. If you don't know how to touch type, you should probably start learning how to touch type as well. It's like no data engineer worth their salt can is like not touch typing. Is like you need this fluency. You need to start working towards having this fluency between your body and the computer, so that the interface is no longer an issue, and then you can focus on thinking. You can focus on thinking about the problem.
So you're saying typing is not an issue. Typing,
Typing is an issue. We're trying. You should work towards having it not be an issue. So can you touch type at least 60 words per minute?
I see.
That's something that you need to start working towards if you can't already do that. Again, like a data engineer, if you think about it, like they're working 40 hours a week doing programming. That's what that job is. It's a lot of typing.
I see.
So this whole like auto completion stuff is really just a crutch.
Mm. Is one thing that I find VS Code can address is here. I already have a
You can
code.
close that. You don't need to you have that open. You can close that.
Which one?
The
The terminal?
pane, yes, the terminal. If the terminal is not working, then ignore it.
Right, I agree. But you see, this is one of the issues that I encountered is
Yeah, we talked about this last week.
right. This is an issue with I never at all touched
If you close, it doesn't matter what's going on in there. You can close that. You can just ignore it.
yeah. But you mentioned that you need to have the editor. You have to test the code here. You want you should have a separate screen, separate terminal to run the script, right? So I mean I can do this in the WSL terminal, sure, but I just when I first got to um, try VS Code, I thought this aspect can be a little frustrating.
Yeah, but the thing is, like Sublime doesn't have a terminal at all.
No,
So, but yeah, I totally get where you're coming from. I'm just trying to let you know that VS Code is probably a better thing long term.
sure, no, I appreciate it. I think those are along VS Code in particular, we touched upon unit testing. This is something I really want to do unit testing and debugging sessions.
They're very different.
Oh wow! I thought debugging is just to find errors.
Yeah. Debugging is there's a bug and you want to remove it. Okay. Unit testing is you're writing software to test the original software. And you are going to end up with a body of tests, a test suite afterwards that you can rerun, so it becomes an asset. So unit testing, or rather developing a good test suite, a good unit test suite is like developing an asset. You're developing like a set of tests that prove that the original software is doing certain things. Debugging is a removal process. Is like there's an issue with the software, I want to remove it. You don't really have anything to show for it other than correctly working software. Completely different concepts.
So what's a good resources to read on debugging version?
Well, debugging, so there's debugging in general, which is the process of removing a bug. But then there's a specific tool called a debugger that has its own learning curve. Is that what you're interested in? Are you interested in learning how to use a debugger or what?
Oh, you, so soon enough, I will be reaching the stage where I will be doing debugging fairly fast.
Yeah, so I think starting, doing a very basic, if we did like a very basic like walkthrough of how to use the built-in debugger in Python, I think that would be really good for you. So if you actually search through here through the docs, there is the Pdb module.
So if I just search here in this search window,
Yes, that's what it's for.
PDB,
No, Pdb. B.
oh, B, okay.
Yeah, so remove the V. It's three letters. Pdb.
So PDB,
Yes. So this is the Python debugger, and it's also built into Python, so we can read about it. You can click on it. You can read about it. You can click this. So this is like how to use the dev docs. Later on, you'll become more fluent in how to read documentation. But basically, the Python debugger, if you had some sort of bug in a function, and so you know about print debugging. Do you know what that is?
no, for
Print debugging is like if you go into your functions, like if you bring up your software, your VS Code.
right. So if I go down,
If you scrolled up, just go to the top. Okay. And then to the left, like this font is really big. Is this big for you?
no, I can do a little bit smaller. So this is
It's like too big
yeah, a little bit. So
because I can't see the ending.
which is split.
It's usually Windows key minus.
Cool.
Did that work?
I think so.
I don't think so. I think it just put the minus at the end. It just puts another minus in. Anyway, whatever. Who cares? So let's say you have this function called round average 5, right? And let's say that you don't know what's happening. So maybe you have an issue with line 3 where value first decimal point. Like you want to know what's the value of that after, on line 3. Print debugging would be like after line 3, if you did print open paren value first decimal point close paren. So you're just telling the program, hey, what's the value of this variable? That's print debugging. That's debugging. So you're trying to remove a bug And the technique that you're using is by just printing. So this should be familiar to you, right? This is what everybody does when they have an issue with a bug in their program and they try to fix it. This is the first thing they do. This is print debugging. There will come a time in your career when you're struggling with a function that's too large, or a code base that's too large for you to efficiently print debug. So you would have to like print debug, who knows, 50, 100 different things to try to figure out what's going on and where the bug is. When you hit that point, you will want to, instead of using print debugging, you'll want to use a proper debugger that's designed to solve these problems. So a debugger, you would begin using it by importing Pdb at the top. You would do import Pdb. If you can't alter this function, we should be working with a function you can alter. We should make like a very dummy program that just like prints out 2 numbers or something and then try to debug it. But here, if we did import Pdb, okay, and then instead of print debugging on line 7, yeah, so this is what I'm saying, like it's a crutch. You should not be using that until you're ready, until you are further along in your career, where it's like you know exactly what you want to type, you just want to then make the typing faster. You're not there yet. You're still learning. And so the auto completion and stuff like that, it's a crutch, I think, for you. So instead of doing line 7, you would do pdb.setTrace, and it would be really great if you could run this function. So let's look at the documentation. It shows you how to use it. The documentation, dev docs. The browser, devdocs.io. So if you go to the main section and you like scroll down in the main section, that's the sidebar, the main section. Keep going. Yeah, you're going too fast. Can you search for set in this? Can you search for set on this? Yeah, SET underscore trace. Can you enter? Keep going. That's fine. Keep going. All right, stop. So this is showing you how to use it. So you're supposed to import PDB, and then where you want to start the debugger, you would do pdb.setTrace. Okay. So if you just put that instead of the print debug in the source code, pdb.setTrace there. Open paren, close paren. Now if you ran this function, is there a way for us to run this function? Let's try to run it. Also, save this file.
I can go to the WSL terminal, run this, but am I supposed to, in the future, am I supposed to just write here inside the VS Code?
No, don't worry about that. Just forget VS Code even has a terminal.
Understood. Sure. File pass. Loading function.
Okay, so you have a syntax error at the end of the file. So if you remove those minus minus,
Use what exactly?
so you can, this is readable here, it says. So you ran Python 3 rounding function 0505.py, right?
Right.
And then if you read this error, this is an error. It says file rounding function 0505 line 30. And then it shows you line 30. And then it says syntax error, invalid syntax. And it shows you an arrow where the minus minus is. So you need to remove the minus minus on line 30. Python errors are actually surprisingly easy to read. Unlike other languages. Did you save your changes? Well, yes, you must have. Why didn't the pdb set trace stop? Oh, you never run this function. So you just define the function, you don't run it. So could you after the function is defined, could you just do the name of the function and then, oh, but this takes some arguments, huh? I think either way it would be fine. So if you executed this function just for testing purposes, if you did round average 0.5 open paren, maybe two strings.
I need to activate the Python interactive session first.
I wouldn't bother with that. So this is just, I'm just trying to teach you how to use the debugger. I really don't care about the virtual environment right now.
Oh,
So
you're not talking about active shell?
no, it's not what I'm trying to show you. It's not what I'm trying to show you. In fact, if it makes it easier, we could probably just start with a different function to test. But you wanted to test this function.
Oh, we can deploy a new function. Let me write it in two strings.
Well, I'm just saying, like, you could just test this function if at the end of the function, after the function definition, if you just executed that function name and passed in two dummy variables,
Right.
just so that's to see if we can get inside of it. No, no print, no print, no print.
Okay. That's what
Run the function.
okay. That's what get a return from
No.
shell after
I'm
the
trying to teach you, the debugger is gonna do a lot of things for you. You're gonna see some stuff.
oh cool. So you have to have different parsing RCVs or just regular if it's regular integers. Okay, that's clear with me at this point.
Okay, great. Now when you rerun the command, it'll,
Okay, let's see.
No, so you did find. You need to.
Yeah, sorry, sorry. Control S for save. Run. Right about that. Control C for S for save, and then run the program again.
Okay, so this is the debugger.
Gotcha.
This is saying, okay, PDB, and we've stopped execution on that line.
I see.
So if you go back to the file, the VS Code,
Right.
if you scroll to the top,
Gotcha.
the debugger is pretty much giving you a Python shell, but it is at the point in time on line 9. If you think of this program as a timeline from top to bottom, where time is increasing as you go down, time is going forward. The debugger that we've kind of dropped on line 9 lets us do experiment with the software at this point in time, at this exact point. So if you go back to the terminal, we can see that the debugger gives us a full Python shell. So we can do like 2 plus 2 here. 4. We can say things. I actually forget the commands, but so like if you go back to the VS Code, what if you wanted to figure out what was the arguments? Value prev mo. So maybe if you put in value on prev mo previous month and press enter, maybe it would print out 10.
Yes, it's going to give us the whole condition in the terminal, right? But not. Okay. Oh yeah, it does. Right.
Okay, so this is more powerful than just print debugging. This is like, okay, I can stop the program at a point in time, and I can answer a lot of questions. I can ask a lot of questions, and get answers to like the different pieces of state of the program at that point in time. And you can also mutate the state, which is very powerful for experimentation. What if you wanted to what if you wanted just to very quickly change the value of so if you go up, so we see that we compute average before rounding. So could we print that out in the debugger? Average before rounding. Okay, so we see that's 15. What if during our debugging we wanted to answer the question, what would happen to the rest of the program if instead of average before rounding what wasn't 15, what if it was 20? You can actually mutate the program in the middle of its execution. So you can say back in the debugger, you can say average before rounding is equal to 20. Yeah. And then echo out average before rounding.
Oh,
Repeat it.
right. Okay.
Enter. Yeah. So this is what a debugger can allow you to do. What if average before rounding, what if its derivation was not simple? What if that value, in order to get that value, was a very complicated process? Instead of having to go through and figuring out all of that complicated process, you could maybe just change the value immediately before its use, in order to try to figure out what is the problem, what is the bug. We're debugging, we're trying to remove the bug, and so we need to figure out what's causing the bug. This is debugging. And then if we go back to the documentation, we can see the more powerful features. So if you go to the top of this page, So you see here that there are, oh, I see. Okay, so we can do question mark. We can do question mark to figure out how to use the debugger. So if you go back to the debugger and put in the question mark, enter. This is the manual. This is how to use the debugger. The debugger is a very powerful tool, and so it has many commands as well. And so this is a very short kind of like overview of the commands. And let's see, if we did question mark A, for example, maybe we could see the help on the A command. I don't know, so just try question mark A. Okay, so it says that A is actually an abbreviation for args, ARGS. So it's an abbreviation. And then there's a short description of what this command does. It says it prints the argument list of the current function. So you can maybe try that right now. You can press A, enter. And we see that this function that we're in right now was called with these two arguments with these values. This is helpful for debugging. We could go through all of them, but that might take some time. I'm trying to figure out which are the most useful ones. So we also see that there's the abbreviation A, but then there's the full form args, ARGS. And either one would do what this does. So the full version would be if you put in ARGS, args, you would get the same output. You see? So that's something to be aware of. There's the abbreviations and then there's the full form. There is, let's see, clear. Okay, so list. If you did list, well, if you did question mark list, so that we can get a description of what it does. So this lists source code for the current file without arguments, lists 11 lines around the current line, or continue the previous listing with dot as argument, lists 11 lines around the current line. So this is going to print out the context in which the debugger is currently stopped in. Because remember, the debugger stops on a line of code. So let's try this. Let's run L, so you can see what it does. Yes. So this is telling you exactly where the debugger is right now. Right now it's stopped on line 11 here. Well, it's on line 9, and then it kind of skips to like the next. It's saying that the next piece of code that's going to run in the future is line 11. So that's why there's a little arrow there. The debugger allows you to very carefully step line by line through software, so that you can identify the bug. And so then the next thing to know is, after figuring out the context, is you can do continue. So if you did question mark C, this is continue execution, only stop when a breakpoint is encountered. Well, actually that's not what I want to do. Can you do question mark? I think I want to step. And no, just enter. Just do question mark. I want to see the overview. I myself don't have this all memorized. So when this is what I also try to teach. I try to teach you how to teach yourself. It's very important to know that most programs have a help so that you can figure out the solution. You can't always go to Stack Overflow to get an answer. Sometimes you have to fish for yourself. Sometimes you need to read the instruction manual yourself. So there's step. So if you did question mark S, you see here that it says execute the current line, stop at the first possible occasion, either in a function that is called or in the current function. So step will advance the program's state by one line. So it's going to execute the next line. So if you did S, enter. So now if you did L enter, so we can see the context that we're in. So it's kind of hard to see, but you should know from the source code that if line 11 is false, we would go into the else. Now we're in the else on line 21. So we executed line 11, if value first decimal point equals 5. That was false. So we actually went into the else of this 11 into the else on line 20, and now we're ready to execute line 21. That's what happened there. And then if we were to step, if you do S, enter, and then L, enter. Okay, now we're ready to return and exit the program by returning rounding average. It might be interesting to at this point print out rounding average before it's returned into the from the function. So if you did rounding average, enter, you would see the value before the function returns the value. And then if you did S, enter, step. And then if you did L, enter. Maybe step again, S, enter. L, enter. Okay, so now we're going past the function execution and we're going to go into this comment. So if you did step, enter, S, enter, L, enter, and then the program exits. So congratulations, that's the first time you've debugged or used the debugger to step through a program. And it's a very, very powerful tool. So like this is just the tip of the iceberg. You can memorize the shortcuts and get pretty good at stepping through functions you did not write yourself to figure out what the problem is. So that's debugging. So next time you have a problem in your software and you're not satisfied with print debugging, you know that you can try this tool to try to figure out what is the problem in your software. Yeah, and it's built into the language. So this is another good thing to learn. Okay? Any other questions?